I'm extraordinary. What of it?
Behind the beauty of Lawrence of Arabia was complete mayhem. Actors drinking gin in 120-degree heat, professional movie camels who absolutely despised their human co-star, and even the crew nearly fell victim to the desert. This film may have etched itself in history, but it almost ruined everyone who brought it to life. Here are 10 facts you'll never forget. Fact number 1. Peter O'Toole nearly died from dehydration while secretly drinking gin. The Jordanian desert was merciless. Temperatures regularly hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit with zero shade for miles. Most actors would take frequent breaks, stay hydrated, and retreat to air-conditioned trailers between takes. But O'Toole was obsessed with staying in character. He refused special treatment, insisted on doing his own stunts, and pushed himself to physical extremes that worried the entire crew. During a particularly brutal week of filming, O'Toole collapsed mid-scene from severe dehydration. His lips were cracked, his skin was burning, and he was barely conscious. The production shut down as medics rushed him to a hospital, where doctors immediately put him on 4 fluids. For hours, no one knew if Lawrence of Arabia's star would survive his dedication to the role. When doctors examined O'Toole, they found out he'd been secretly drinking gin hidden in his costume to stay hydrated throughout filming. The man was literally consuming alcohol in 120-degree desert heat while playing someone famously abstinent. He nearly killed himself with the world's worst survival strategy. Fact number 2. Albert Finney was cast as Lawrence, then fired after 2 days. Albert Finney was David Lean's hand-picked choice for Lawrence of Arabia. This was 1962. Finney was an established stage actor with serious dramatic credentials. He'd proven himself in kitchen sink dramas and was exactly what Lean envisioned for the complex, tortured Lawrence. The contracts were signed, costumes fitted, and cameras ready to roll on the most expensive movie of the decade. 2 days into shooting, everything fell apart. Lean fired Finney without warning. The official studio line was creative differences, but rumors flew about explosive arguments between director and star. The most expensive movie of 1962 suddenly had no leading man, no backup plan, and a ticking clock with hundreds of crew members in the desert burning through money. Enter Peter O'Toole, a complete unknown from the London stage who'd never starred in a major film. Lean bet everything on a nobody with piercing blue eyes and zero movie experience. O'Toole's career-defining performance made him a legend overnight and created one of cinema's greatest characters. One of the boldest casting choices in cinema history. Fact number 3. A crew member lost their life during filming. The famous camel charge scene required hundreds of riders thundering across the desert. It was dangerous, but spectacular. These weren't Hollywood stuntmen. They were local riders who knew the desert but weren't familiar with film safety protocols. Every cavalry charge was essentially controlled chaos with dozens of moving parts that could go wrong in an instant. A crew member was accidentally struck and killed by a camel during filming. In the midst of it all, a crew member was caught in the chaos and lost their life in what should have been a routine shot. The entire production was horrified. The loss devastated everyone on set and fundamentally changed the production's atmosphere. Crew members later said the tragedy haunted every subsequent dangerous scene. Fact number 4. Every single scene was shot in real deserts. No studio sets anywhere. In 1962, most epic films used studio sets for convenience and safety. With controlled lighting, comfortable temperatures, easy access to equipment, and the ability to reshoot scenes without weather delays. Studios had perfected the art of creating convincing desert environments on soundstages with painted backdrops and artificial sand dunes. It was the smart, economical way to make movies. David Lean refused every compromise. Every single scene had to be shot in authentic desert locations with real sun, real sand, and real suffering. He dragged massive crews, expensive equipment, and hundreds of actors across the deserts of Jordan, Spain, and Morocco for 3 years. When sandstorms hit, they waited. When equipment overheated, they suffered. When actors collapsed, they recovered and kept filming. Lawrence of Arabia holds an unbreakable record. It's the longest film ever made entirely on location without a single studio set. Not one scene was faked, not one backdrop was painted, not one moment was created in comfort. They literally lived Lawrence's desert nightmare while filming it. The authenticity you see on screen cost 3 years of genuine desert survival. Pure masochism disguised as movie making. Fact number 5. Omar Sharif's entrance required days of torture for 4 minutes of screen time. Originally, Omar Sharif's introduction as Sharif Ali was straightforward. He'd simply walk into Lawrence's camp and start talking. Standard character introduction, nothing fancy. But David Lean was never satisfied with standard anything. He obsessed over every entrance, every gesture, every moment that would define a character. Sharif's first appearance had to be unforgettable. Lean conceived the impossible. Sharif would emerge from a desert mirage, appearing as a tiny speck on the horizon and slowly materializing over several minutes of screen time. The timing had to be perfect: wind direction, heat shimmer effects, lighting, camera distance. If any element was wrong, they'd start over. And they did start over, dozens of times, with Sharif walking toward cameras in scorching heat. That iconic 4-minute entrance took weeks to perfect. Sharif spent days trudging across burning sand toward the camera, only to be told to walk back and try again. Wrong wind direction? Again. Bad mirage effect? Again. Not quite the right mysterious emergence. Again. The magical moment that made Sharif an international star was actually weeks of desert torture disguised as cinema poetry. Fact number 6. Lawrence of Arabia destroyed the Oscars like a desert storm. The 1963 Academy Awards featured serious competition. Dr. No launched the James Bond franchise. The Manchurian Candidate redefined psychological thrillers, and To Kill a Mockingbird tackled America's conscience. Multiple films had legitimate shots at major categories, and Oscar night promised to be a real contest between very different but equally worthy movies. Lawrence of Arabia entered the ring with 10 nominations across every major category: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and sweeping technical nominations for cinematography, editing, art direction, sound, and score. Could any single film actually dominate that completely? The ceremony would either crown a clear champion or split victories across multiple deserving films. It wasn't even close. Lawrence won 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director, sweeping nearly every technical category it was nominated for. The 1963 ceremony became known as the Lawrence of Arabia show because Lean's epic conquered the night so completely. The only major loss was Peter O'Toole for Best Actor, starting his legendary streak of 8 nominations without ever winning. A complete Oscar domination that left other studios wondering why they bothered making movies that year. Fact number 7. David Lean destroyed friendships for single shots. David Lean was a perfectionist beyond reason. He'd reshoot scenes if an actor's shadow fell incorrectly on sand. He'd wait hours for clouds to move for ideal lighting. His editor and Coates, a longtime friend and collaborator, knew his obsessive standards but had never experienced anything like Lawrence of Arabia's demands for visual perfection. Lean made Coates edit the famous match cut transition, where Lawrence blows out a match and it cuts to the sun rising over the desert, 37 different times. 37 versions of the same few seconds. Each time, Lean found microscopic flaws that no audience would ever notice. Coates worked around the clock, recutting the same moment over and over while Lean demanded impossible perfection. Several crew members, including longtime friends, refused to ever work with Lean again after Lawrence wrapped. His obsession with visual perfection destroyed personal relationships that had lasted decades. Lean chose film frames over friendships, creating a masterpiece while losing the people who helped him create it. Sometimes artistic genius comes at the ultimate human cost. Not just physical suffering, but emotional destruction. Fact number 8. Crew members became professional sand smoothers in 120-degree heat. David Lean's vision required every desert shot to look pristine and untouched, as if humans had never walked across these ancient sands. The Lawrence of Arabia desert had to appear exactly as it did in T. Lawrence's time: pure, windswept, and undisturbed by modern interference. But film productions are the opposite of pristine, they're chaos incarnate. Between every single take, 200 crew members and over 1,000 extras left footprints, equipment marks, entire tracks across the sand. The pristine desert became a muddy construction site covered in evidence of modern filmmaking. Each looked like an army had marched through, which essentially they had. The untouched desert was completely destroyed by the act of filming it. Crew members spent hours between every take meticulously smoothing sand and erasing every trace of human presence, all while wearing full clothing in 120-degree heat to avoid deadly sunburn. They became the world's most expensive janitors, wielding rakes and brushes to create perfect desert illusions one grain at a time. The epic vistas you see on screen required armies of people working as professional sand sculptors in hellish conditions. Fact number 9. The camels were professional movie stars who hated Peter O'Toole. Lawrence of Arabia required hundreds of camels for the epic desert scenes, but these weren't ordinary animals. They were professional movie camels, trained, experienced, and accustomed to working with actors and cameras. These animals had worked on multiple films and knew how to hit their marks, follow directions, and stay calm around loud equipment and large crews. For reasons no animal trainer could explain, the professional camels absolutely despised Peter O'Toole. They would spit at him, bite him, throw him off their backs, and generally refuse to cooperate whenever he was near. Other actors had no problems, but O'Toole triggered some primal camel hatred that made filming nearly impossible during crucial riding scenes. O'Toole later admitted he was genuinely terrified of the camels and called them impossible creatures. The most heroic character in cinema history was constantly being humiliated by his four-legged co-stars, who saw right through his legendary performance. Lawrence of Arabia conquered the Turkish army and unified Arab tribes, but Peter O'Toole never conquered a single camel. Hollywood's greatest desert warrior was defeated daily by professional animal actors. Fact number 10. The movie had no sound recording, everything was added later. Recording sound in the desert presents unique challenges. Constant wind creates noise that makes dialogue impossible to hear, and the vast open spaces provide no acoustic control. Most productions would record some dialogue on location and supplement with studio work. But Lawrence of Arabia was filmed in some of the most acoustically hostile environments on Earth. The desert wind was so constant and so loud that the sound department couldn't record a single usable word of dialogue during the entire location shoot. Not one line from Peter O'Toole, Omar Sharif, or any actor was captured cleanly enough to use in the final film. They had millions of feet of silent footage and no idea how to make it speak. Every single word of dialogue, every sound effect, every footstep, and every ambient noise was recorded months later in London studios. The actors had to watch their own performances and recreate their line readings to match their lip movements. The most authentic-looking desert epic in cinema history has the most completely artificial soundtrack ever created. What you hear is pure post-production magic masquerading as desert reality. 10 facts about Lawrence of Arabia that prove making movie magic in the desert is pure insanity. From camels that hated their co-star to cameras fighting sand for cinema history, this epic nearly destroyed everyone who made it. Which fact shocked you most? Subscribe for more stories about movies that were harder to make than the wars they portrayed.